Welcome to Bloom, the place for highly sensitive change makers to be inspired to step into their power and be the missing link that they are waiting for. Let me introduce my friend Sarah to you. Today she will be in the spotlight. You probably know her from the first episode where she very generously offered to be the co-host on my very first episode in order to empower me. And this time we're going to talk about all of her fabulous projects and all the things she's bringing into the world. So Sarah's slogan is no labels, no limits, no excuses. And this is also the name of her podcast. That is now on episode, correct me if I'm wrong, 327. So that tells you a lot about stamina and about finding an audience. And on the more professional side, in the business sense, Sarah is a distinguished founder of Sarah Box Coaching and Consulting, and has just crafted the Sandbox Productions and has over 35 years of experience with both nonprofit and entrepreneurial spheres. She has received numerous awards for her contributions to government service and is dedicated to positioning nonprofits at the forefront of transformative discussions, something that is so necessary in this world. And she's an accomplished executive director, victim advocate, board member, and leadership development trainer. And she continues to inspire a positive change and innovation. There you have the perfect example of an HSP change leader. So, Sarah, let's dig in. My first question to you is based on something that we once talked about, and that is that you have, as a child, you already had that desire to connect people, and that desire certainly morphed in all these kinds of projects that you actually developed later in life. Can you tell us a little bit more about when, actually you told me you have a kindergarten story to it. Let's start with that.
So it's funny. I mean, it's funny to me because it was an event, but it's an event that I've never forgotten. And so, which tells me it had some significance in grounding me to something. So I grew up in a time when our kindergarten classes, you basically went through school with the same kids. I know it shifts with people moving and stuff more, but here I am with a group of kids that I just met that year. And we have our little partner up to go get the milk and graham crackers and stuff. But in our play area, our free time, we had an enclosed playground that only the kindergartners could be on, that was between the classroom and like the principal's office. So it was a safe area. But in this place, if you can imagine, it's not huge, there were bamboo bushes up against the building. I understand for safety purposes, it kept kids from running into the buildings and hurting their head on concrete. But back there as kids, right, we would go back and play hide and seek and all that stuff. And because we were small and they felt huge. But I remember one of my classmates, a friend of mine, a guy friend in that era, had a crush on this other gal. And I remember their names to this day. But he was super, super shy. And the other gal I also knew liked him. Again, they weren't going to talk to each other. So they're in that weird kind of goofiness space that we all are when we're young. So I talked to him, and then I separately talked to her, and I said, okay, at this time, I'm playing hide and seek. Come meet me in the bamboo forest, basically. And I got them back there, and we were just chatting. And then I just said, I'll see you guys later. Right. And I left. But my whole intention was to get the two of them together, create some short bridging thing, and then get out. Right. I didn't need to hang around for the story. And then they actually became like in kindergarten, the kindergarten version of boyfriend and girlfriend. And I can't remember how long that lasted, but I felt so great about that because I went, wow, that wasn't very hard. All I had to do was listen to what two people wanted and help them get that. Right. So I think it's an underlying theme for what I do. It's like, okay, I'm listening to the story. I'm helping someone figure out how to get it. In that case, I was being very directive, like, here's how you're going to get what you want. Meet me here. And when I'm consulting, that's kind of the tack. It's like, here's how you can get what you say you want. Let's come up with a strategy. But, you know, and then coaching, it's a little different. But I just laugh because I can keep going back to that incident and see how that kind of filtered through other areas of my life as well.
So you have a lot of things in that little story. And certainly one of them is this HSP capacity to actually listen and to have these antennas for, oh, there's something here that maybe I could support or that can happen. And I also really like that, I like that, and let's tie it in with the work they actually do for nonprofits and for solopreneurs. And maybe you could also tell us a little bit about the sandbox. So, because
Sure.
that has so many aspects of that little story right in there.
So let me start with kind of who we work with most. So I've been an entrepreneur. I've had different businesses. I've run nonprofits as an executive director. I get firsthand the stress of all of that. In fact, that's what really struck me when I was working in the nonprofit sectors, how many great people are doing good work. And it's super stressful when you're entirely having to focus on where are we going to get the funding to keep this project going. So right at the moment that you're making traction with whomever you're helping, maybe you have a 1-year grant and you're in month 9, right? And you're going, do we have to sunset this or does it continue? So to me, that's crazy making. You wouldn't say to a big business, okay, you only have 9 months of funding, so make enough that you don't have to ask for more and keep going. Mm-hmm. So when I left the nonprofit world and went into consulting, I went in, again, focused though on supporting nonprofits to bring in more of kind of like a strategy or business mindset. And it's been valuable to do that because a lot of times nonprofits start from a passion place. I get it. I mean, it's like we get moved to take action on something, but not necessarily with a coherent strategy behind it. And in the beginning, our energy and enthusiasm can keep us going, right? Wow, we can do this. We can rally the troops, if you will, and get forward momentum. But that will only last for so long. And without strategy or a way to be able to communicate your impact out to people who will support you or join you in the effort, nonprofits go under. And they go under at a pretty surprising rate. I mean, they're pretty easy to form if you get the legal paperwork down. I mean, it takes time. They're not that hard to form, but they are hard to sustain if you don't have a clear strategy and can show track record. So that's where I've spent my time, is really helping nonprofits think through the questions of why are you doing the work you're doing? So it's the basic mission vision, but it's even more than that. It's like, why are you offering the services you're offering? Is it just because they've been grandfathered in for 10 years and you think that's what you need to do, or the funders will pay you to do that? And really asking a hard question of, is that aligning with what the people you're serving need today? So that's kind of the bigger, how it all morphed in.
So that gives us an overview of a part of the work that you do. And I'm intrigued because I believe that many highly sensitive people start out either as solopreneurs or they join nonprofit organizations because we have such strong feelings about what we see needs to change in the world. So the work Sarah does is very important to support that group of people that don't have a strong voice yet, or don't yet have a solid financial background and the power to shift things by mere size. Would you say, what's your experience? Are these, does that match with what I'm saying? Do you have the feeling that actually many highly sensitive people are in that arena, or is it just my take on it?
No, I'd say you're right. I think people who want to make a change get in there. I also find people who have been helped through nonprofits or the services are often willing and interested in contributing back, right? Because they get what it did to open up their life. So as an example, if I may, Yesterday, I'm facilitating this group. I don't know these people. I know their director, but I don't know all the individuals I'm working with at this point. And we're having a discussion, and this one person, the part of it was like, how does what you do in your role contribute to the vision and impact in your community? They had a very specific vision. And she's telling her story. She wasn't taking long, but she starts to get really emotional. And she said, this organization allows me to be here today. I couldn't have done it without it, right? So here she is. It took off that whole, you can't do it, right? It's too big of a problem out there in the world that you yourself can't handle it. They helped her, but she goes, I am so dedicated to helping others who want to break kind of through that veil of you can't do it, right? The lies or the limits. So I do think that's true. A lot of people who are change makers want to do that. Oftentimes they'll go into nonprofits, I think, because it is very heart-centered, and the impact you can make is directly on people. Not all nonprofits are set up in that way, but I'm talking about nonprofits who work at a community level or family level, those types of things.
And what you also mention is this need for community. And that's one of the things that you very early, it's one of your gifts, yeah? That you pick up how you can connect people into community in order to help them to be more effective in bringing their vision, to this earth, to make it happen, to find the funding, the right people, just connecting the dots. And I know many highly sensitive people that will not even start with their projects because they feel so isolated. They feel alone. They cannot find their community. They have no idea how to find the money. So what kind of advice would you have for them? Apart the fact, no excuses.
You took that away from me. So, but what I would, no joking though, I would say you can't believe the lies that you tell yourself in your head.
Mm-hmm.
We do that. We limit ourselves. We think no one else would support me. I will say one of my biggest breakthroughs was learning how to, when someone says, could I help? Instead of saying, no, I've got this, which it really was very reflexive for, no, I got this. Because in truth, I had it. I could get it done. But when I started saying, sure, that'd be great. And I got to tell you, I had a clutch in my stomach when I started saying that, because it made me think, okay, if I ask for help, do I seem less than? Do I seem incapable? How will people perceive me as a leader? And then I thought, well, here's the downside if I don't ask for help. I'm grinding myself down. I don't have the reserves I need to show up to be who I need. So it sounds silly, but when someone says, may I help? The first thing you want to say is, yes, thank you. Even if you're not sure how they can help, just say, yes, thankful. Yes, thank you. That would be super. And if you don't know, just pause and think about it and go, what would you like to do? You can actually ask someone what they're willing to help you with. They may say, hey, I'd like to take this little piece off your shoulders for you. And I watched it yesterday with people sharing back and forth. These are people who work with each other every day, but they are so focused on their piece that until we backed up and I said, how do you notice when a team member is stressed? They could identify it, but they didn't know what to do to interrupt it. And so, it's just those tiny little things, how may I help?
Yeah. And isn't that interesting how even in Europe, I think in America, it's even more like that. It is, there is no education about asking for help. Yeah.
It's a weakness.
You mentioned that, sort of say, if I'm a leader, I need to have it all sussed out and I need to always be the strong one. And I really love the work that Brené Brown is doing around vulnerability and leadership, because it opens up a completely new way of leading that is a lot more suited to the talents and traits of highly sensitive people. And you mentioned that in a way you are addressing, with what you just told us, you're addressing cooperation. How can you actually cooperate with others in order to achieve a certain goal? And the other thing is, that's how you build community.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I'm not a big fan. This is just me. I'm not a big fan of saying, I'm being authentic just so that you like me, right? But
Right.
to be able to say to someone, I kind of need some help right now, and I'm using help as an example, and being real. And also to think about, okay, if it's community, we're all bringing something to the table. You know, there's the whole saying is the collective we is greater than the individual me. And
Right.
yes, we need all the parts on it. And I know that you and I've talked before about my work with the Enneagram, but folks always want to know, well, what's the best number? There is no best number. We need all of us together. We bring different things to the table. So, but it can be really lonely and isolating. And I know I'm in a couple of different mastermind and group learning areas. And one of the things I woke up yesterday thinking about was I'm behind on this one. Like I have all these aspirations and goals and I'm working really hard on them. And then all of a sudden I thought, okay, I need to interrupt that thought pattern. Now I'm not at home. I'm in a hotel room. So my way of interrupting is going, I need to listen to somebody. So I got this short, it was like 15 minutes, but it was just a call. And it was so ironic because it says, okay, if you're in the head space where you're saying I'm behind, I'm thinking, oh, she's listening to me. I listened to it, but it was such a wake up call about how we, when we're like on our own, especially if we're working in our own heads, we compare ourselves to things that are not comparable to where we are on our current journey. So it helps to have that outside person step back and in this case, just say, hey, you are, number one, you are where you are, but you're measuring yourself against what is yet ahead of you versus taking a moment to look back and say, wow, look how far I am from where I started. So, and that's a big premise of that book, The Gap and the Gain. You know, it's so powerful. It's like measure the gain, not the gap, and measure to yourself.
I love that. I love that, Sarah. That is very, very good advice because, again, we all have days where things just either seem to fall apart or we criticize ourselves, and that trait of highly sensitive people, that perfectionism can be so destructive. So thanks very much for offering us.
It's not our friend.
Sorry?
Perfectionism is not our friend.
No, it is not our friend, but you know, we need to navigate around it. We need to
Yes, we do.
to take the trauma that has sort of made that, if we have accumulated trauma on that, we need to sort of work on that. But most of us will still remain perfectionists to some degree. But you just gave us a very nice little strategy how to cope with it. And talking about, well, I don't know if you would call it strategy, but one of the things that you're a master of is the Enneagram. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is and how it works and how you're using it in support of others?
Absolutely. So the Enneagram is an assessment, and rather than being a skills-based assessment, so people who are familiar with the DISC assessment or as strengths finders, those are looking at how you show up and your skills, like the drivers under that, your preferences under it. The Enneagram is really more about the underlying framework, the stories we have about, and that affect how we think, act, and behave. And so there are 9 types, 9 core types, and each of those has influencers on it. So for folks who are familiar, there's the wings, there's the path, stress path, growth path, the triads, you know, whether you're primarily interacting with the world through your instinct and guts, through your heart center, or through your thinking process. And there are different drivers for each of those types. So that's like a super duper high level piece of it. And there are such great books out there. But a couple of years ago, when I learned about the Enneagram, I guess it's been a little longer now, and was used it in an assessment, got assessed because one of my clients wanted to use it in their staff retreat. So I can't help people if I don't know and have experience. So I started working with it, and it was so powerful because it helped me understand blind spots that I've had. I mean, I've had for years. And it isn't about finding fault with the person, but to understand, like, where are my sticking points? So for instance, I know when I'm tired, overly tired, that I get really edgy, controlling, cranky, and very curt. It's like, and it's, and the people closest to you get that. Like, you can behave in public pretty well, but inside, man, you're not the top of the game. So for folks wondering, I'm a 5, and I'm a right in the middle hardcore 5. So, but what it did for me was to help me understand, like, how do I balance that? How do I grow through that? Because we're all on a continuum, and we're either acting in our healthy, the beneficial way for us, our type, or unhealthy, the not so beneficial way, or we're on autopilot. And my goal always in life is to continue to grow. So it isn't about having excuses saying, well, this is who I am and how I am, just live with it. It's like, well, how could I be more me? Right? Because the stories we tell ourselves limit us. So I use it that way, but I also work with my clients to help so they can understand, like, because they'll say, why am I like this? Why do I act like this? Why does this bug me? I'm thinking, well, here's some things that might be informative to you, and so we'll use that. But in terms of a team approach, it's been very helpful in teams where leadership styles seem very different. So can imagine this. You have someone who is your direct supervisor, and they are, as the Enneagram goes, a number 1, right? The number 1 they've got different names, but I'm just going to use one of the very common one is the moral perfectionist. They see things very black and white. Things are either right or wrong, but not because it's my way or the highway. It's because there is a good and an evil. I mean, it starts, if you go down deep, it's that basic. Imagine someone like that supervising people who are creatives in the heart center. And so there's a way to do something, but those other people, they want to put their own flair on it and all this stuff. That supervisor's going nuts. There's a way to do things, and they're going nuts because they just are trying to make things better. And how come that person can't see it? So you can see these little glitches and add to that a power structure. So it's been helpful in folks understanding how to better communicate with each other, as well as what are the things that set different types off. So that if you and I are having a conversation and I already know going in, it's going to be maybe emotionally stressful for one or both of us, I can be aware going in and not inadvertently set you up to put you on the defensive. I can go, okay, I know Yoli, these are important things to her. And I think this is every leader's responsibility. The person who has more quote unquote power is the person who needs to adapt first. Everybody needs to adapt and learn to do that. But so anyway, I use it that way, and it's been helpful for organizations.
But I bet it would also, first of all, thank you for that. And I bet it could also be very helpful for highly sensitive people who take things so personally, especially if they have been bullied or excluded and they feel isolated, and then they're in a situation like you described, to sort of learn that it has nothing to do with being HSP. It's just that there are also other types of personalities that don't match up very well, and they could maybe learn about strategies.
Absolutely. Well, think about it. We both wear glasses, right? But if you always wore yellow tinted glasses and I always wore green tinted glasses, it would be incomprehensible that we could look at something and I go, I don't get why Yoli looks at it that way, right? It's because the lens that you're seeing things through is just colored differently. It's not that there's a flaw.
And it's like a different layer. So humor me. I would like to know, I mean, I think I'm a 4, so we already have a difference there. So is there something like typical numbers for highly sensitive people? Would they tend to be a 1? Or is there no research on that yet? I mean, I would find that very intriguing to see, let's say, do most HSP have green glasses of some kind, never blue glasses? Or is there anything like that? Does that exist? Or
that is so interesting. I have seen like sites that focus on HSP put things out, but the degree to which those are researched and normed, I don't know. So I would just be saying, well, my best guess would be, but if you think about, one of the things is let me just answer that by saying one of the reasons we don't ask people to assess themselves with the Enneagram until they are more developed as adults is because when we are younger, we are given, quote unquote, our set of glasses, right, by the people who raised us, until we're like 5 or 7. We already start to have a certain lens applied to our life and our values and stuff. Then we have our personality and our preferences. So all of that will influence how someone sees something. So you, as a scientist and researcher, would understand the HSP piece way better than I do. I think you will find HSPs across the board, but how they would present if they have a stronger, like say you're an 8 and are more driven and you're kind of like that out front decision guy, inside you're still going to have some of the HSP pieces. But that's such a great question. I feel compelled to research it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
That's the happy place for a 5. Oh, could we get more information?
Yeah, see, I must have a 5 wing then.
You do have a 5 wing and I have a 4 with you. So
Let's see, that's how we get along. My next question, or actually maybe, I don't quite know which way to do this because you do so many different things. I mentioned the sandbox that is all about connecting and community. But you also do some work around sustainability. So, I hand it back over to you to maybe for people just to see, that being an HSP can actually create immense opportunities once you start using your gift. And in your case, that is so obvious because you built so many things that serve other people and serve that desire inside of you to connect.
Well, yes, thank you for that. So around the, you want to do around sandbox? Is that what you're asking, or how it weaves in?
I think, yeah, maybe my question was not put really well. I mean, you say we, and I find that interesting. You say that on your homepage, we, you don't say I, serve nonprofits and create sustainable results. So that.
So who is the we?
Who is the we? And, and if you want to, we can also, and I would like to also go into, to the aspects of the sandbox, because I understand that is the last thing you're actually developing. And we can talk about your podcast. So we've got plenty of things.
I just want to make sure I'm tracking with you. Okay. So the we, yes, it's my business, Sarah Box Coaching and Consulting. The sandbox is under my business. But I'm going to say, like everybody who ultimately has a business, there's always a team in the background, whether you acknowledge them as employees or collaborators or what, because at some point you have to have help. So I know there's solopreneurs who are probably doing soup to nuts. That's not sustainable over time, right? Because the minute you stop working, revenue stops coming in or slows down. Even if you've got recurring revenue streams, you still have to be in the business. So for me, having come from the corporate world, from the beginning, I realized I didn't want to replicate that process of having a bunch of employees, but I did want to replicate having colleagues. And so I very intentionally started partnering. And the first person I partnered with is I said, what role are you doing? She goes, well, I'm the online business manager, basically. If you look at everything I do, I said, perfect. Online business manager, check. So, but we have a vendor relationship, right? She provides services to me, but over the years, that's so much more than that, right? It has grown and morphed. So her name is Summer. And actually this week, we just put out an email for folks saying, meet Summer. She's been behind the scenes with me since day one. So I've got Summer. Then we brought Maria in. Maria writes, she's a content writer. She loves writing and researching. We had her do a short stint as a podcast interviewer to interview specific people and do some moments with Maria. And so she's on the team. And then the fourth person who's regularly on the team is Ken. Ken is an Emmy Award winning filmmaker. He comes from the high pressures of like television media as well as Hollywood. But he now is focused on us helping nonprofits become sustainable by helping get their stories out in video, as well as crafting stories, really thinking, how do you frame this so it connects with people? Because one of the things around sustainability, which you were asking about, is people aren't telling a consistent story, or they're telling their story to the wrong audience. Like, so it's very common to say, well, who do you want your message? I want it to go to everybody. Well, no offense, but not everybody cares about that message, right? A funder wants to hear one thing. People who are looking for your service want to hear something else. So Ken is like my collaborator on that. We're actually working on a really great free workshop that we're going to offer up here pretty quick. And then also Rupert. Rupert is my behind the scenes guy, and he produces all the podcast episodes. After I've recorded them, I upload them, and Rupert gets them. He brings them home, and then Summer gets them out there on the site. So here we have this group of folks who are connected, but not obligated to one another. We work together by choice. We stay together by choice, and we co-create. And so for me, going way back to that story about collaboration, I like to work in community, but I did not want to replicate the whole thing of like, now I have to administer this big organization. So everybody has their own businesses, like they're their own established businesses, but I'm the umbrella of that.
Yeah, that seems like a perfect fit for a highly sensitive person, because it means you're not boxed in, basically. You're not having to have a hierarchy that everybody needs to follow, but you have people are connected enough and free enough at the same time. So that is almost ideal situation. So let's circle back a little bit and return to some of the questions that I very often ask, because we talked a lot about the results now, but how did you get there?
How did I get
overnight? How did you start out, and when did you realize that you wanted to do things differently?
Oh boy, you know what? I was thinking about that very thing today. There was a moment. So I was maybe 15 years into my corporate. So when I left the nonprofit sector, I went to work for a fairly young corporation at the time, super successful still today, great nonprofit. They're a for-profit corporation, but they serve the nonprofit human services community, doing great work. But as others may relate to this, as you rise up in the ranks, I started going, I can do that work. Yes, I can do the accounting. Yes, I can work with the CPA on this. Yes, I can do that. But I'm thinking, it's not my best and highest use. And I can work and create reports, all of that stuff. But I am not the person who will crank out hours to generate revenue for the sake of generating revenue, which of course the business needs. And I'm not the best person. Terrible supervisor. I'm going to tell you, you just outlined why my business is structured this way, right? I am not wanting to be the person who says, I'm sorry, you're not showing up perfectly like this. Because Yoli, I don't care. Are you getting the work done? Great. Do it the way you want. I'm not the best. I'm not the best process person. I will follow a process in place, but I don't want to manage or micromanage someone because they're not like right on spec. And so the more we grew and the demands grew as the corporation, I was still responsible for like managing people. And I thought, it just isn't me. And some of the things I was being asked to do, I felt were not terrible. I mean, they're normal in corporate, but for me, I felt they were somewhat not honoring the uniqueness of the individual. And I was on an airplane home. Another time I was really tired. Anyway, I'd flown down to do this one-on-one meeting with one of our remote partners, employees. And the purpose was to basically say, this needs to change. You need to change it or make a decision to leave the firm. In a nutshell, that was the message I was asked to deliver. And I'm thinking, that's just not me. So we went to lunch. I sussed it out. I said, so how's this going? That, what do you think you can do to help align this stuff? But that's all I did, right? Well, I'm on my way home and I'm on the airplane. It's like 11 at night. I know I still have to drive home when we land. And I'm mad. I'm seething mad inside, Yoli. So I write this email to my business partner and I copy a couple other managers on it. So it's not just a vent with nowhere to go. And I said, this is not in line with our values. This is not in line with, I mean, I just went off. It was probably not my most professional moment, but it was at that moment I
Authentic.
thought,
It was
it
authentic.
was epic for me because I thought, okay. And I hit send. I did not, I just thought, you're sending this. You deal with the consequences later. But I hit send and then I felt a little nauseous. But, I got over that. But I realized like, there's nothing wrong with the corporation. I was the person who needed to go,
Mm.
right? It's not, there was nothing wrong with it. That's how it's been successful, right? It had its expectations. You either worked in this way or you didn't. But I was getting burned out and frustrated and I just thought, wait a minute, you're expecting other people to change. Maybe you need to step out, right? Because I'd had this other dream in the back of my head of going out and starting coaching and going in a different direction. I thought, quit making it about other people, Sarah. So I started small, getting some training and certification. And then like a year and a half later, I just went out, I sold my shares back and left and went out on my own.
So, two such important things here. One, you reached a point where you realized you needed to take a decision for yourself, for your own sake, rather than blaming the system, to understand and have enough faith and trust that you had something inside of you that wanted to go somewhere else. And then you had the courage to build it up slowly, to lay a foundation and build up something that was more aligned with that intuition, with that vision of where your talents might be used more. You use that word, useful, actually really useful to a community and to others. And I think that is, I hear that over and over again, that that sudden insight that you described, to say, no, it might also be the outside world, but I need to align with myself if I'm going to stay healthy, if I'm going to be productive in a way that actually serves and makes me happy and other people happy in the result. So
That's such a great observation.
And I hope this will be very useful to our audience, because I would assume that a lot of people listening are struggling, at exactly that point. Am I going to leave? Am I going to stay? Do I have the courage to build something that is my own? Will I find my community? And you are an example of, yes, that can work, and it can work out brilliantly.
And you will find your community. I think, just human evolution, right? We have that fear of being cast out of our quote unquote communities or tribes, whatever language you want to use around it. It's a built-in fear. You die, right? If you're cast out. That's not the accurate thing for today. We don't necessarily die, but we can feel the isolation and the pain of it. But it is not hard to find a community. The trick is finding the community you want to stay and contribute in, and not just hang out around the fringes.
Definitely. And that experience, I mean, we're not saying here, us against the corporate world. I think that will start to shift as time goes, that will start to shift. But like in your case, your experience in the corporate world is very valuable. It's not like it's lost time. There are many, many things you learned about yourself and the world. And
work. Just a lot of the stuff I know today, I would not have known had I not been there. I just wouldn't have known it. So it was very beneficial, but it's also good to know. And I think this is a common question with people when I coach. It's like, when is the right time? It's like, check in with yourself. We don't have to stay places forever. And so maybe your time to change and learn something new is up, and you can try something new on.
And what's the fear of not doing it, or the fears? Yeah. And what is the truth that is actually pulling you? These are very, very important questions to ponder.
It's always easier to blame something external to ourselves. It's like, well, they made me do it. Or it's like, well, they gave you a choice. You could do it or not do it. You get to make
Limits,
a decision.
no labels, no excuses.
No excuses.
Back to that.
Exactly.
Motto, which I really love. And I think the no excuses is not meant in a harsh way. It's not meant in a perfectionistic way. It's meant in the sense that you just described, and that is have faith in yourself and just take one step after the other.
Yeah, that's exactly. I actually did that for myself. That tagline I wrote for myself when I was leaving. It's like, no labels. Don't say I'm only this, I'm only that. Don't limit yourself like I can't be good enough. And no excuses. Try, start. So that I did for myself. And then I thought, I'm trademarking it, which I did. But that was really my own thing. It's like, Sarah, you can't give up on yourself.
I love that. I really love that, Sarah. And as always, I will ask my last question. That is there something you would like to share that I forgot to ask or that didn't mention?
Well, if I went on and asked a bunch of stuff, it'd all be about you. So I think there's nothing particular that I want to share except to encourage people. If there's something that's kind of like been niggling in the back of your mind going, I wonder if, I wonder when, at least write it down on a piece of paper so you can see concretely what you've been wondering about. And then give yourself time, not forever, not months and months, but give yourself a week to reflect on it and go, I wonder if doing X would feel right for me, and just sit with it. Or pretend like if you're out in the world going, well, if I was doing this right now, what would that be like? But you can play with stuff in your head, but I really do encourage writing stuff down so you can see what you were thinking about, because it's easy to go, yeah, I thought about that a while ago, and you're thinking, and I know when I went back through books, I have notes from 2016 when I was thinking about what I'm doing today, and it was nowhere on my mind how I was going to get there. But I wondered if it was possible.
Yeah, this visioning and this, it's like exercising a muscle. And, whoever is listening, if you've got trauma and other things that, make those limiting beliefs very heavy to deal with, go and get help. There's plenty of help out there to support you to move limiting beliefs or fears that you have, and don't let that keep you from developing a vision that you have, and a place where you want to lead, or a passion that you have.
Yeah, we need everybody in the game.
Yes, let's let that be the closing words. We need everybody. As I keep saying, we are the missing links. We are the people we are waiting for. So we need to step up and encourage each other and make it happen. So Sarah, thank you very much for taking the time. I know you've traveled a lot today, and you have a whole day of work. And still, we made it happen. No limits, no labels, no excuses.
Yoli, I feel the same about you. Oceans between us, but I feel like right there with you on it. So thank you for allowing me to be a guest on your podcast and communicate with your community.
Thank you.